Is sobriety worth it? You hear all the time that it's the battle of a lifetime, that it's a lifelong journey of emotional growth and doing the work. Is it really worth pouring that much time and energy into staying sober? When you're in the thick of the struggle, it can be tough to remember why you're fighting. This episode is meant to remind you what life is like on the other side of that craving or that hard situation or that tough emotion. Listen and then bookmark this episode so you can come back to it the next time you're not sure if it's really worth it.
Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery Podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, but it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Steve and Julie. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full, there's no space left for alcohol.
If you're a regular listener, we have a favor to ask. With Dry January just around the corner, people are going to be looking for resources to help them stay sober. We would love for them to find our podcast because we believe it's an incredibly valuable free resource. If you agree, please take just a few minutes to go leave a rating and or a review on Spotify or Apple, or leave a comment if you're listening from our website. Every rating and review makes it more likely that our podcast will make it into the hands of the people that need it. All right. Hey, everybody. So nice to be here with you guys. Welcome to episode 120 of Through the Glass Recovery Podcast. It is crazy to think that we've been doing this for 120 episodes straight. So really excited to have you guys. Really excited about this topic. I think it's going to be a good one. Lots of good positivity today, which is always kind of nice. Sometimes we bring the heavy hitting hard topics, and I feel like this one's a nice positive one. So anyway, before we dive in, we are just going to go ahead and do our introductions. And since Matt's been here like a time or two, I'm going to let him start and show us how it's done.
All right, man. I think actually the first episode I was on, I was actually the first one as well. So, yeah, Matt, I live in Burnt Hills, New York, upstate New York. Single dad. I have two kids, a son who is 10, a daughter who is 7, and about 22 months sober. Yeah, that's about it.
Sweet. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
And then we've also got Chris, who is here for the first time. So welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Chris Cardone. I am a career bartender, and I have been in the alcohol industry in some facet since 2000. I live in Long Island, New York. I work in Manhattan. I also have two children. One's 14, a girl, and a 12-year-old boy as of tomorrow. And what else? I'm closing in on 10 years. My sobriety 10-year anniversary will be Memorial Day of 2025.
Nice.
Fantastic. Boy, that's got to be a really fascinating experience to be a career bartender and also 10 years sober.
I have so many questions.
I know, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I'm super excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So I read a quote the other day that said, discipline is remembering what you want. And this made me think of recovery. I think we've all been there when it seems hard to remember what we're doing all of this for. Sometimes it's hard to see the benefits, or it feels like we've just been slogging along, staying sober, but not really remembering what it is we're fighting for. So I thought today we could talk about the benefits of sobriety. What makes it worth it? How has your life changed for the better since getting sober? Anybody's welcome to jump in, and we'll just go from there.
It's a short introduction.
Matt's like, crap, I was still figuring out what I was going to say.
I was writing my notes down.
I wrote on my notes today. So I guess with that, I will start with this though. Like I said, I was writing my notes today, and I was writing. Right, instantly I was thinking about like the basic stuff, like you're being present, you're healthier, saving money, you're waking up. I'm over that stuff. But then I started looking at like bigger things, and I guess like the last thing I wrote down, the final thought I had to this was, what makes sobriety worth it? And I just wrote the ability to ... because really it's when I go back and look at all the things I do, it's enabled me to basically do or go wherever I want to, right? I have the freedom to be able to do those things. Um, and before it was not like that. Obviously, when I was actively drinking, my life was based around. Well, at the end, it was based around making sure had enough to drink or was in a position to get something to drink to keep myself from going into withdrawal. So I guess I'll just throw that out there for now, though. Just the ability to, and I to leave that open for right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's spot on, it is. It's the ability to, and then you can fill in your blank, because I think everyone has a different experience and everyone has a different relationship with sobriety and what it allows them to do, right? And so when I thought about this, my thing was that I think I'll even use yours, Matt. It allowed me to face all of the issues inside that I was allowing alcohol to numb and to keep me from actually dealing with, right? So for me, one of the biggest things was like, I mean, none of you know me personally, but my sister is like the dream child, right? So, 5 years older than me, graduated all with all the honors, went to the best business school, graduated with honors, married the CFO, white picket fence, 3 children, dog, you name it, right? And so for me, there's always been this sort of like second best hanging over me. And those feelings that come with that, you don't want to deal with it. And so what do? Well, just like if you have a bad day at work, you go out and you drink and you numb yourself so you don't have to feel it. And so all of those kind of things, when you take alcohol out, you don't have anything left to numb yourself or any way to hide, and you just have to kind of like let it happen and rain on you, and you have to kind of figure out a way to deal with it. So, like I said, to use your analogy, Matt, it allowed me to face all of that stuff and come out on a better person on the other side of it.
That's shame, right? That not good enough, not as good as. Like, that's essentially the definition of what shame is. That's my story too, is I grew up with the feeling of just not ever being good enough. And not for any good reason. I mean, I didn't even have a sibling for like that was amazing for my parents to make me feel like I was compared to. Just for whatever reason, that's what I grew up with. But same thing, I was able to face the shame. Once you're not drinking to numb it, then whatever that is that's under the surface bubbles up and you get the opportunity to face it if you have the courage to do that. And it's tough, but yeah, no, that's spot on. I really identify with that.
I'm gonna go with I never beforehand I never really gave my thoughts the chance to get too far down any path because it hurt. And so once I quit, it was kind of like what you're talking about, Chris. Like you numb the mess, but once I quit, the the short-sightedness disappeared, and then all of life started showing up in a way that I could start putting names to things, and I could start being I started to be more self-aware. I started to really understand this was happening, this hurt, shit. This was happening, this feels great. Wow. And so I think the benefit to this was is I started to learn how to feel. And I started to learn how to name how I felt. And I started to actually educate myself. And I started to think on my own. Because I think there was a people pleasing thing, a large people pleasing thing in there where the benefit was is I stopped abandoning myself. And I started to figure out what Steve liked, what he didn't like. I think I started to figure out what I didn't like well before I figured out what I liked.
Hmm.
But whichever way works, right? You can start crossing the stuff off the list and then adding stuff on later, or adding stuff on the list and other stuff falls off. But I think for me, yeah, I'm gonna go back to what Matt said because I really love that. This is the ability to try, because I gave up. I gave up a lot. I didn't try, And when I did try, it was only a little bit. When it didn't work out, I gave up. I tried. It felt like I tried really hard. And then it didn't work. So I didn't try harder, or I didn't try again, or didn't try anything different. So my stubbornness for drinking and sticking to that, because I was really good at that, is come around, and it's a stubbornness to try and be better. And there's a stubbornness to try and improve myself a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot, but even those little bits. Some days don't have to, but that's fine. But heck, it's come a long way in 3.5 years. Long way.
I think you said something really important there about feeling emotions.
Mhm.
And that's the ability to feel emotions, right? Emotions color life. And I lived my life trying to avoid feeling emotions by drinking, thinking that emotions are bad, and to stop doing that and actually allow myself to feel, and the ability to learn how to feel without going off the deep end, because that is a learned skill. That has made life so amazing, to just be able to feel all the feelings, the good, the bad, all of it. Like, they literally are the color of life. So I liked that point.
And I think there's a value in being able to feel, in that as you learn how to do it, you gain confidence in yourself, and you start to realize that you can handle the stuff that you used to use alcohol as a crutch for. So again, I had a bad day at work. That's okay. I'll feel all of the feelings I have, and I'll wake up tomorrow and have a better day, instead of, I can handle this. Let me go run and find something to help me handle this. You develop a confidence in learning how to feel.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. What's going through your head, Matt? I saw like a smile there, so I'm wondering what you've got.
He had the smirk.
So I don't think I have one note today that about like this, about feelings. So it's just kind of funny that we're talking about feelings, and I didn't even really think about, I guess, that aspect of it, because that obviously is a huge thing. Um, but I guess we would just, for me, it's recognizing the feelings. I guess more like when I think about it right away, like I can tell when something's not right. I might not know what it is, but I'm able to at least acknowledge that something's going on, right? And usually at some point I get down to the base of it, and I'm able to. I mean, for me, usually it's just once I get my crap out, I can let it go and move on for most things. Like, thankfully, I guess that's like the one major thing I guess I've gained. It's like I do not hold on to these things like I used to, and just sit there and just let it roll over and over in my head. I mean, I can go for a few days for sure, but like I can get it out, and I mean, I can just it's over with and just forget it. But if you didn't have anything about feeling, it's like that's just funny to me.
I love that you always show up with notes.
If you It's a whole life switch in the end. Like, I feel like it's absolutely hard to quit the one thing. And you see that saying on the internet every once in a while, you give up one thing to get everything back. And they're not wrong. That saying isn't wrong. I didn't even know what I had lost, because it was
Mhm.
so concentrated on it, on the next drink, or just muddling through life. I don't muddle through it anymore. I might muddle through some shit, but I'm not blind as a bat to it anymore. And so it comes with, it's a blessing and a curse some days. Or so things will happen in my life, and I'm I can now, because I can read myself and understand myself, I can look at a situation and have a pretty good idea what's going on. One that I didn't have before, I would just react. How about this one? Responding versus reacting. Go.
That's relationships, right? For me, that's what responding versus reacting is. That's another thing I was thinking about that's gotten better, is the relationships in my life. Like, some of them are honestly not the greatest, which is fine, but the ones that have a lot of potential are just getting better and better and better. because I'm learning how to show up like an emotionally healthy adult instead of just drinking away everything uncomfortable. So I think that's been a huge benefit for me. And it also, when you get sober, it points out which relationships don't really have a lot of hope and probably aren't worth the energy anymore versus, pouring your energy into the relationships that do have a lot of potential. So you just get that clarity, like, where does my energy really belong? So you're not just fighting for whatever it seems like you're supposed to fight for. I think that's kind of a big one.
Yeah, I have two things to say. So the first one was that when Matt was talking, one of the things that he kind of made me think about was that I think most people, I've always tried to be very empathetic that we're all again on a different journey and everybody has a different relationship with this stuff. But I think most people that tend to have any kind of addiction issue tend to have an addictive personality. And I think that one of the things that getting sober allows you to do is replace that addictive behavior with something that is more positive and allows you to grow or better yourself in some way. And so, Steve, when you were talking about the idea of being stubborn, you kind of switch that addictive personality into a positive, and it's now no longer a negative aspect of your person, it's a positive aspect of you. Your stubbornness is a good thing. It's allows you to continue moving forward and driving in positive directions. So I think about, for me, the addiction kind of instead of having a drink, it became reading self-help books and focusing on mindset and learning about how your brain works. And then to kind of transition to the second thought I was having is when you were talking about sort of just muddying through life and just kind of going through the motions. I when you first get sober, you're just dealing with getting sober, right? You're trying to handle all the feelings and all the stuff that comes through it. But as you get a little bit more comfortable with the day to day, I wanted to learn why I felt so off everywhere I went, especially if I had to go to work or if I had to go to an event or something in the industry. I just felt weird and I felt off and I didn't know why. So doing the research, I found this really interesting analogy that helped me a lot understand where I was mentally, is that if you say, like, working out is a great analogy for it, but if you work out every single day, you build up your strength and you can lift more weights and you can do more things. If you take a year off from working out and then you try to work out at the same way you did a year ago, you're not gonna be able to keep up. You're not gonna be able to lift that weight. You're not gonna be able to do what you did. You have to retrain. And so the analogy was used as, if your baseline happiness is, let's say, a 4, and alcohol or drugs bring you up to a 9, and that becomes your normal baseline, when you take that away, you're no longer at a 4 anymore, you're at a 2, and you don't understand why you feel so lousy until you sort of retrain yourself to, again, not muddy through your life. You have to bring yourself back from to a 4 originally, and then work yourself up to a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and 8, and learn how to sort of enjoy life without that substance. And it takes time to learn how to do that. It's not, you just don't, quit drinking or quit doing drugs and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm happy now. Going to a sports event without drinking is weird at first. It feels like something's missing and it doesn't feel like you're complete. And then you retrain your brain to start enjoying life without it. And for me, it's gotten better because now, bad example maybe, but now I actually remember the game that I went to, or I remember the party I went to, or I remember that fun night I had with my friends, as opposed to saying, oh, yeah, I had a blast. And I really didn't take anything home from it. I didn't remember it, or I blacked out from it, or, maybe I woke up to a bunch of text that says, what were you thinking, or whatever the situation may be. All of that negative is gone and it starts to become, wow, this is a beautiful experience, but it takes time to get there.
I was shocked so I really was a pretty happy person starting around like 90 days sober, right? Like I found community, I found connection. I surrounded myself with other people on the same journey and that made it so much more comfortable. I've done this twice. The first time it was not that comfortable. Second time I had community. Really, I was a fairly happy person throughout even relatively early sobriety. Like I would say 3 months is still pretty dang early sobriety. at 3 years in, like, it's still getting better. I'm still enjoying experiences more and more and more. And that is surprising to me because really by like a year sober, I was like, "Oh my god, life is amazing. I love this." And at 3 years sober, I'm like, "Oh my god, it keeps getting better." I think for sure there's bad days. I don't wanna, like, make it sound like it's all rainbows and unicorns, but the good stuff is so freaking good now. And, like, that I mean, I can't even imagine what it's gotta be like at, like, 10 years if it's this good now and it just keeps getting better, so
Chris is like, thumbs up.
yeah, I'm it makes me excited to keep going. It's good motivation, right?
Over at bat again.
I know.
Shalom. This is interesting. I started kind of thinking about like first getting sober and like just yeah, like what made you didn't know what made you happy. That's just kind of where my thoughts were just going with that. Just how difficult that was. Just kind of went a little brain tangent right there for a second with things. But I guess again, go to my notes here. Like everything I wrote down was about like what I've gained or what I've gotten back. And then you mentioned like happiness, and it's like these things that I've gained, they make me happy. So like I guess like to I guess say it on the biggest thing like that I feel like I've gained through this because I mean I feel like even before I really made my recovery public, my addiction was kind of known. Um and I talk specifically well I guess work I've learned work it was there and known. But with my son plays baseball. I've talked about this before, but um more people knew than what I was aware of, about it, and now I think almost well, again, a majority of them know, like, a year, I made it pretty public with things, right? 2 things with that. 1, when I, shared that I was a year sober and, you know, was, like, more a message for hope for people, right? Because I struggled for a very long time. I struggled bad. A mother on the team reached out and said she was 2 months sober, and actually, like, 2 weeks, December 1st, she'll celebrate a year.
Awesome.
And there's been a couple other instances where just, like, parents have had stuff going on, and I'm the one they come to talk to. And, like, that's I'm gonna say it's a heavy responsibility, but I feel like it's not for me, right? Like, people have come to me with things that obviously they don't talk to other people with. And, some of it, like, health stuff, whatever it may be, but they'll just come and talk and just let out all these things of what's going on in their life. And, you know, some things I can relate to because I've been through some pretty crazy things through this journey. Other things I can't, but to be there to listen for them, right? Let them have that person they can talk to and know that I'm not going to go to the next person and say, "Hey, did you hear this? Did you know this?" And then, you know, start that whole cycle. And to me, like that's one of like the most amazing things that I guess I would say I've gained mm, really over the last year in sobriety is having people have that trust in me to share these things with me. And I can't think of the word to describe the feeling inside. Like I guess like the self-worth. It's they people when people come to you with these things and it's just like and you know like they have this look on their sorry, they have this look on their face and you're just like, yeah, what's up? And it's there's nothing they can say is gonna shock you. This it's like, okay, yeah. It's just amazing.
There is something special when someone gives you that level of trust. They don't have to ask for it. It doesn't need to be a request. It's not something that they're like, please don't tell anybody, blah, 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 blah. Right? They just come to you because you feel like a safe place. So you've shown up enough in your life. And for some reason, when you come out with something vulnerable, and this is what happens with vulnerability, right? Vulnerability normally begets more vulnerability. If
Mhm.
you give some of it, I mean, it doesn't happen with everybody. It just doesn't. Some of it just you get slapped in the face with. That's fine. That's life. They just somebody's just showing you where they're at. Okay, cool. I'll move on. But it normally begets more vulnerability. You open yourself up more to people, and that's definitely given me the courage to open myself up more to people. And I must be showing up differently too, because I can relate to that when you talk about that. Julie, you got something you're ready to say. It just look, I could see the look on your face, but it does. And that that feeling is special. I thank people. I'm like, thank you for your trust, because that's what that feels like to me. And that feels like something that I didn't used to have. I didn't used to have the trust. I didn't, what I did used to do was gossip. I don't anymore. There's things that I cut out of my life that have maintained or helped me keep a more positive energy, and gossip is just a negative energy. It doesn't get me anywhere, it doesn't get anybody else anywhere. And so one of the benefits is I can put my energy in a place that is positive, either for my own good or for somebody else's, because I'm just more emotionally available. The one thing I got out of what you said, Matt, was I get one of the benefits. I'm more authentically me. I can now have the courage in most situations to just show up as me and see where that lands, and be okay for the most part with the rejection and learn from it. And what I get out of that is I get more authentic relationships. I feel like the more real I am, the more real I get in return. And the one last thing, and then I'll hand this over to whoever, is self-agency. And that's a word that when I first heard it, I was confused as to what the meaning of that word is. But it means to me that it's like an all-encompassing. There's self-worth, there's self-confidence, there's an ability to just show up and make decisions for myself that I believe in.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna. Can I circle back to the happiness thing for a minute?
Yeah,
That
you're allowed to circle back to wherever you want.
I know I love the idea of talking about happiness and thinking about happiness, because I think that's what we were all chasing with alcohol, right? You want to feel happy, and for most of us, happy is like either the high that you get from drinking, or it's numbing anything negative because that's your version of happy. And so, like, just hearing Matt talk about happiness and Chris talk about happiness, I was listening to the Mel Robbins podcast, and Tal Ben Shahar was on there, and he's like this super respected professor he teaches like a happiness course at Harvard. I want to say it's Harvard. And that interview has stuck with me. I've probably referenced it on this podcast before. But it's essentially like how to be happy, right? So there's two pieces of happiness that he talks about. And the first one is having something to work for. And so the example that he gives is, if you're preparing to run a marathon, you're working for it, you're working for it, you're working for it, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. You get there, you run the marathon, and then you almost crash because it's a letdown, and you don't have anything to work for anymore. And that's where you're getting your happiness. People just don't realize that it's not the goal, it's not achieving the goal that's making you happy. It's working for something. And that's exactly what we're doing in recovery. Like every day, that is how we're living our lives, is working for something. So recovery in so many ways is like a recipe for happiness. If we see it as that and appreciate it as that, it has the potential to be that. The other part of happiness is um, just appreciating the little things, having like your routines that you go through that just bring you a sense of peace every day, which again is the thing that most of us do in recovery. Is we have our little routines, or our patterns that we go through each day that kind of keep us grounded, and that is also a part of just living a happy life. It's just the normal basic things. And I think understanding that, most of us, if we're really actively and intentionally engaged in our recovery, we have those pieces of happiness. And for so long, we were just chasing it with alcohol. So I don't know. I think it's kind of cool that we have that. We get to have that now versus what we thought happiness was. And I think it helps to understand too what happiness is, because it's not the high that you get after you take the first drink that we all probably thought was happiness.
cool example. I'm listening to you talk, and just because of the experience that I had, not was it yesterday, happiness, direction, a goal, a thing to go for. I just went back to school, and so I'm in my first semester, and yesterday I was offered an internship that starts in May, which is amazing, and I was super, super excited about. But one of the things that I was super excited about, because I still hadn't figured out which direction I was going to take. I was going to take business, accounting, social work. I wasn't sure. So I set myself up to still not have an answer, but to support my not having an answer. Too afraid to kind of pick something. Following the breadcrumbs led me to my internship is at a tax accounting firm. So now I was actually really happy, even in the conversation that I was having with Julie, that I get to pick a direction. I have picked a direction. I have picked a way to go. And now I'm, my happiness is now I can focus on putting these things in place and beginning that part of the journey. Like, where's it going to go? What's it going to look like? I have no freaking idea. But if I do the things and figure it out, that part excites me. So it was just neat when you talked about the happiness thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the journey of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I read a cool quote about happiness, and that is happiness is the moment where you don't want anything. And I think that's kind of a cool concept, right? When you could get to a place, even if it's for a moment, where you say, there's nothing else I want right now. And that's that person's definition of happiness. I thought that was really cool. And so, Matt, I think the word you were looking for was pride. And I think that a lot of people, myself included, when you're drinking like that, you deep down know that you're doing sort of something wrong, or that you don't have control, or that you're not happy with what you're doing, or there's some level of consciousness that you're not where you need to be or where you want to be. And so I think that not only overcoming the obstacle of ending that relationship and becoming the better version of you, I think that obviously fills you with pride, but to have people reach out to you, and I've had the same situation where people reach out and they ask you, they again, they give you that trust. I think that there's a value there where you sort of feel really proud of yourself because like you said, you're showing up. Like people can see through bullshit pretty fast. And I think when somebody sees the authenticity of what you're doing enough to tell you a personal thing like that, that means that you're doing it right and you're showing other people that you're doing it right. Because if they don't believe it, they're not coming to you to ask you for help. And so I think that word is pride. And it's sort of, Steve, is the same thing, right? Like you're proud of yourself for making that choice. That's a big deal to make a choice, right or wrong for you.
Yeah.
You you have a pride sense that I'm making a choice here. And if it doesn't work out, I'll be okay. And I'll figure out a different way to go. And it'll all work out because again, you've built this confidence, this sense of esteem that I think a lot of us lack when we're drinking. I know I would wake up in the morning often and say, I got to stop doing this. What am I doing? And then sure as shit, later that night, I was doing the same thing again. And
I was very esteemless.
yeah, yeah. And so, I got sober during a divorce. And I remember saying to the therapist I was seeing, I described myself as a monster. And she brought that up years later and said, the first day you came in here, you described yourself as a monster. And it kind of took me back to that moment. And I was, again, lacking in self-esteem, lacking in pride, lacking in feeling like I had any worth or that anyone would want to talk to me about anything. What am I? What kind of symbol am I for anybody? And so I think that happiness is sort of when you get to a place where you don't feel that anymore. You don't have that want anymore. You're there. You're where you want to be. And I think it seems like everyone on this call right now is in a place where genuinely happy with who they've become.
Mhm. Absolutely. Matt, do you have anything else?
You don't have to pull any magical rabbit out of the hat either.
No, we just wanna make sure you had a chance to say something else if you got anything.
No, it's no, I mean, so I guess I'm like looking. Sorry, go ahead, go for it.
How has your physical health changed? Is the one thing that we haven't really touched on
Mm.
is our physical health. And when you stop drinking, physical things happen. They just do. So how has your physical health changed?
Physical health. So that's a very interesting one though for me. Like I was on a bunch of medications from drinking, like acid reflux, stuff for anxiety. With that, obviously, if you're taking some type of an anxiety medicine when you're drinking, they basically wash each other. So that wasn't anything. I don't know. I was taking gabapentin. I was taking a bunch of stuff. Don't even list it all. Either way,
You had your own pharmacy.
I did just like 6, 7 pills a day. You know, at probably like the peak time of taking stuff. I got off all those things. I go to the gym now 5 times a week. I'm up every morning, either going to the gym or ride an exercise bike before work. Physical health is good. I have an issue with M&Ms that I've talked about quite a bit. Or you get rid of those, I'd be like a physical specimen probably. But those things, as I get older, are fighting against me. But interesting enough, some of the stuff like that I was taking medication for, like acid reflux. I don't know if it's because I drink too much coffee or whatever, but like has started to come back. So I do, as you bring this up, need to get back to the doctor. Like I don't know if it just that I'm getting older or some of these things are coming back, some complications from all the drinking. I don't know. Uh, but all in all, I mean, like I don't shake, I don't sweat, like all those things that that I had that which most of us all have from drinking, high blood pressure, all those types of things are gone. Health is very good. I guess though the one thing like as I um, was looking at my notes, and this is one that's pretty special that I've been able to do, was able to do this summer, and looks like will happen this summer. So this past summer, I'm a big Who fan. I've gotten my son to like the Who. Roger Daltrey played out in Tanglewood, Massachusetts, and we were able to go see him. And I thought that might be like the one time he gets to see anything to deal with the Who. But I read an article the other day that Roger and Pete, the two guys are still alive from the Who, signed with Live Nation. So there is hope this summer of them going on tour. And I guess the one thing today when I said, what makes sobriety worth it? Like, that is it. Like, we might get this chance to do something that I never thought was going to be possible.
Yeah. Because you're sober.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Because even if it happened when I was drinking, it wouldn't, if they went, it wasn't happening. I wouldn't have had that trust from people. I wouldn't have had the ability to do this. So there's a shot, and that's pretty special.
Absolutely. I'll kind of echo that really quick. I know we're like getting close to wrapping up, but I'm feeling that one. So my daughter, she rides horses. Most of you guys know that, and she's had this dream show, like this dream performance that she's wanted to get into since she was 12. So for the last 5 years, she's been working to be able to get into this show. And she got accepted this year. Like they take 3 kids. So this is a really big deal out of like multi-state, whatever, audition videos and stuff. And she got in this year. There's a chance that might not have happened if I hadn't gotten sober. If I couldn't show up to drive that kid to lessons and training and all over creation, showing horses the way that I've been able to because I'm sober. Like I could not have been the mom that she needed to be really successful in this if I was still drinking. I was bare minimum. I was the bare minimum mom when I was drinking, especially at my worst, right? Um, and I get to show up for her, which gives her a great experience, gives us the great experience together creates memories that would never have happened for either one of us if I was still drinking, because this is a years long endeavor for both of us that just it would not have even been possible. And that goes back to what you said in the very beginning, Matt, about the ability to, right? We we have the ability to do so much, make so many beautiful memories, live life, like actually live it fully because we're sober and we get to do all of this cool stuff.
To answer the health question, I didn't mean to go back. I had I'm 5'10", I'm like a buck 50 if that. And I went to the doctor for an annual physical and he was dumbfounded because he said, "Why are you pre-diabetic?" And we started chatting. He said, "You're not overweight. You don't, do you eat a lot of sweets?" And I said, "No, I don't really have a sweet tooth." And we finally got to it. He said, "Do you drink?" And I said, "Oh yeah." And he laughed because I kind of didn't hesitate. And he said, "We're gonna have to get you on insulin if this continues because your drinking just is, you have too much sugar in your blood." And so I didn't quit for that reason. I was ready to deal with it however I had to deal with it. But then that same year, I decided, it was time. And when I finally went back for my yearly physical, he said that all my numbers were back to normal. And he said, "What happened?" And I said, "I quit drinking." And he said, "That's it. That was the only change." He said, "That's the only change." And so it just blows my mind to think that how fast your body can recover from this. And again, this was not like I was drinking hard for a year or two. I mean, we're talking about, 15 years of just damage. And it was just, 6 months later, all of that stuff was gone and it was all back to normal. So I echo Matt's, you know, feeling of wow, health is real good and it's a completely different ball game than when you're drinking and again having panic attacks and having sweats and again, my one of my biggest things was always waking up in the morning with a sense of dread. What did I do? Who did I piss off? What's my phone gonna say? Again, like how many text messages and will I have bothered somebody, upset somebody? Just that feeling every morning of waking up with that feeling was not was not pleasant. So, to wake up clear and have energy in the morning to work out and again not have any health issues. And so now it's funny, I get teased because I love my yearly physical every year now. Gets up point I so when I go in there and the doctor says they're like we don't see people like you anymore. You're not on any medication. You're not on any, your levels are all good. And he says, I don't see this anymore. And so I'm like, I can't wait till my physical. Let's do it again. It's a good feeling.
I can
You eat-
go ahead.
I was just gonna really quick, can we just talk about how nice it is to not always be worried about your health? Like all I did was worry about what I was doing to my body, and then 5 o'clock would roll around and I would just dump more liquor in it. That's how I lived. The anxiety of the health problems was miserable, and it is so nice to be free of that.
So at my previous job, when I was drinking a lot, they would actually have a nurse come and they would take your blood and they would do all the things because they would just let you do a free health screening. And I avoided the free health screening every year. And she gets a list of all of the employees and checks them all off, who got it and who didn't. And I avoided it for like 5 years. And I quit. And then I went to the very first health screening and she did my health screening and she goes, "How come you never showed up like all of the other years?" And I said, "Because I didn't want to know the results. I was way too embarrassed. I'm showing up now because I quit drinking and I'm care about how my health is." And so she did all of the things and all of the stuff. And she goes, "All of your stuff, like you said, all of your stuff is amazing. This is great." And I was still eating sugar like it was going out of style, but it didn't matter. Like the difference in level of poisoning my body was like just astronomical. And so you heal. You just heal. And I don't know very many people who after quitting drinking 6 months, 3 months, whatever, just start to feel physically better because you're treating your body just better. So like I feel like that is one of the great benefits of sobriety is just I physically feel better. I'm not on and I wasn't on any medication before. I probably should have been. I'm not on any medication now, and it feels freaking great. It feels great
Mhm.
just overall. And then to talk about what you were talking about, and then I'll wrap this up. The two experiences you share. I've never been to so many events and stuff like that where I've gotten absolutely emotional over whether they have me involved or people I know involved or not, because I know it's just that cool of an experience.
Yeah.
Matt, when you were talking about that, I could feel the emotion in your voice, see it in your face, and I was tearing up. And that to me is an absolute benefit because you get to show up that way and then I get to be there too.
Yeah.
Among all of the other things we spoke about, the emotional connection that comes with sobriety is one of the most beautiful things I could ever ask for that I didn't know what I was going to get. And I got nods from everyone. I want to say thank you, Matt, and thank you, Chris, for showing up tonight and telling us and sharing your stories. We really appreciate you guys and your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. We know it can be a tough time of year, and we're glad you're here listening, supporting your recovery, and taking care of yourself. We'll be back next week, ready to kick off Dry January with you.